Hi guys, thanks for tuning into another episode of Nuggets News. Well, we're continuing the Evil Elite series as I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes as the Great Awakening continues. Another huge news week, and plenty of the biggest podcasts in the world are covering some really crucial topics at the moment and getting this message out there. So Ian Carroll went on Candace Owens' podcast this week. She's got millions of followers, and they're really a good deep dive into what's going on behind Trump and Elon and what's the real agenda, who's really pulling the strings with the evil elites and the cabal and so on. So they got right into the blackmail and the relationship with Israel and this push towards AI surveillance technocracy that we really need to avoid at all costs. Now, the other huge news item this week is obviously the tariffs crashing the stock market. So Trump's been a big advocate and spoken about this for years. This is an article he published 37 years ago around tariffs and that type of thing. So there's lots of different angles to this. I definitely think in the short term, they almost want this controlled crash of the stock market to bring down interest rates with that $9 trillion of debt that they need to refinance before they can then pump the economy full of money, turn the printers back on, and obviously that's going to be really good for Bitcoin stocks and all assets. But in the short term, I really think this is another controlled demolition that we're going to have to get through first, and could be some tough times ahead. But Candace is claiming that she knows that the mega movement has been infiltrated and this blackmail with a lot of these key people in the Trump cabinet now really pivoting and making this pro-Israel stance their number one priority, which doesn't really seem to make any sense to anyone, particularly in relation to healthcare and that type of thing. So I'll be watching closely to see what comes out about all this. And again, it's just great to see this being called out, because Elon is just on another level when he's talking about how humanity is just a biological bootloader for digital superintelligence. You know, it's this complete control over nature that these people want, whether it's through, medical means or food supply means or whatever, just modifying things and just not respecting nature and just letting people leaving people alone. And people are really getting fed up about all this. So this is who's another one who Trump has endorsed for office here, Randy Fine, who's been in the past known to be tweeting about his very pro-Israel stance and supporting this genocide that is going on in Gaza, even commenting on pictures of, things that I can't mention for keywords on YouTube and so on, but just really, really horrible stuff that these people seem to be absolutely warmongers and all for. This is a Netanyahu speech where they're just openly bragging about the power and the political sway that they have over US and all Western politics, with everything going on around the world, but particularly obviously in the Middle East at the moment, and this push for the Greater Israel Plan, which has been a plan all along, really, since the Rothschilds set up Israel after World War II. And Trump has also been obviously pushing Iran with the nuke stuff and even threatening to bomb them. So this is just absolutely crazy times in the Middle East with everything going on. And now demanding Egypt dismantle their military presence as well. Now, this is a great podcast I mentioned before, where we had President of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, talking to Tucker about this MS-13 cult. It was created by Bill Clinton, and they were, again, a satanic cult. And this all ties back to these Satanists, and all this child trafficking stuff that I've spoken about is really the key to understanding this entire network of the Cabal and what's really going on. So MS-13, satanic cult, and they're openly talking about some of the things that they witnessed and saw and that was going on at the time that they had to get rid of out of El Salvador. Now, we've seen mainstream reports, NBC in the past, covering Hillary Clinton and how they've all helped cover up these elite pedo rings over the years. So it's amazing to see people finally waking up to this and it getting out through the alternative media, because it's just not really going to get out there, I don't think, through the mainstream. And again, this all ties into everything that's going on in Israel here. So here we have another rabbi who was pushing some of these claims that turned out to be false, as always, and he's now been arrested himself for horrible crimes against children. So we had allegations against Jean-Claude Van Damme being involved in this human trafficking and all this horrible stuff. Investigators in Romania filing charges against him. So we'll see what comes of that. But we're making progress, and we continue to see these big arrests taking place. So this is one of the world's largest pedo networks called KidFlix, and this has been dismantled as part of a big international operation. Plenty of countries involved. And it's great to see these people finally getting some justice. So we actually have had CNBC cover this recently, as Alex Jones pointed out, and the ties to Obama, the Clintons, the Democrats. But really, this is a systemic global problem. It's not just one side of politics. And we've seen this as well in the UK. So this is counsellors and police doing horrible things to kids, and often it's at these schools, churches, orphanages, these types of things where this is really horrible stuff is taking place. And Andrew Bridgen has been fantastic at calling this out over the years. Idaho is set to execute pedos by firing squad. So again, I'm not sure, a lot of different opinions about whether or not anyone should have the right to kill anyone else, even if they've done some pretty vile things. But there's a real crackdown, it appears, on these things. And as I said before, it's going to come from the state level. So this is really sad to see. Virginia Giuffre, who was really involved with the Epstein stuff, Prince Andrew, and she's been hit by a bus, and some people saying only been given days to live. So wishing her all the best and speedy recovery, and I really hope that she gets to see justice for all this stuff before she does pass away. Terrence Howard went on the Patrick Bet-David podcast and called out a lot of this stuff as well, talking about things that happened at Diddy parties, talking about some big names here that he says have all been compromised, and that they tried to do the same to him, and he refused. So yeah, it's just, who would have thought a year ago that this stuff's coming out? So I actually did an interview this week with documentary filmmaker Ryan Matter. So he's made 4 documentaries on this topic and the 350,000 children that are missing and unaccounted for just in the US alone. So this one was pretty graphic in nature and probably too much for a lot of platforms. So this will be exclusively on Rumble if you do want to hear this 1-hour podcast deep dive I did on this topic with Ryan over on Nuggets News Rumble. Now, this all ties into, obviously, Hollywood and the music industry as well. And this was Hollywood actor and comedian Corey Holcomb discussing Mariah Carey and a lot of these rumors going around about insiders in the music industry knocking off people like Michael Jackson and others because of the rights to their music and how much money is at stake. So this is another part to all this as well. But again, always follow the money. Over to the UK now. So King Charles has been advised to step down due to his health issues. So we've also seen the Pope, and I spoke about these places of power, the royals, the Vatican, and it feels like a lot of changes are happening behind the scenes and maybe being dismantled before a lot of this stuff is going to be exposed. So interesting to see that King Charles has been advised to step down. We'll watch that one as well. But the madness continues over in Britain, where we had a school decide to cancel Easter instead to celebrate Refugee Week. And this is all part of this agenda that I've been talking about, the Great Replacement, where they're pushing back. And it's almost like you're not allowed to be white or Christian anymore in white Christian countries. And as I've said, everyone should get along, respect each other's values, but we should not be forcing other people's values down people's throats, particularly of those that have lived there for many years. And this is just insane, these arrests that we're seeing now. This is in the UK, where apparently you need a TV license to watch or record live TV on any channel, and being fined $1,000 if you don't have a TV license. I haven't heard of that one before. Let me know if you are in the UK in the comments down below. And British mother jailed for 2 years for a post that she put on X, on Twitter, about expressing her anger about some of the stuff that's going on with the rise in violent crime, with a lot of these migrants many of which have been radicalized by these NGOs. And this is, again here, a mainstream MSNBC reporting that a lot of these paid protesters and pushing these different agendas, whether it's through institutions or grassroots protesters, a lot of these are funded by people like Soros and all these NGOs to make it appear like there's more of a movement or support than there actually is. And a lot of the time it's just to stir the pot and cause trouble so they can then arrest the victims on the other side or the people that were maybe peacefully protesting. This is all part of that divide and conquer that they seem to love. We've seen it start to tick up in Australia with these, increasing reports of home invasions and violent crime, gang-related crime, and all that sort of stuff. And I don't think it's a coincidence after we've had record immigration numbers over the past few years, and we see that reflected in the statistics that it's disproportionately a lot of these radicalized youths from other countries. So 2 men took loaded guns to the MCG. I really hope we put an end to this madness soon before it gets as bad as it has over in Europe, because, we obviously want our friends and family and everyone safe in Australia. Now, this is, I think, up in Queensland, where we had a farmer being arrested here for not agreeing to use these chemicals that are supposedly fire ant treatments, and it hasn't worked at all. Fire ants are worse than ever in these different regions, but this is what they're pushing on farmers, where you'll now be arrested if you don't do what the Cabal, what the evil elites want you to do. So just absolute madness here. And this is over in the United States, where a lot of farmers are doing these tests on their land and their soil and finding these forever chemicals, which are increasing in these amounts. And I don't think it's any coincidence that we're starting to see, these companies lobby, just like we saw during COVID, to get immunity against pesticide makers here. So it feels like something is coming. As we've said, all this is coming out in the biggest podcasts and all over X and places that don't have censorship. And trying to cover their tracks. But even so, unfortunately, the way that corporations are structured, they might be sued or have to do a massive payout or just declare bankruptcy, but it doesn't actually get to fixing the cause of the issue. We need to stamp this stuff out from happening altogether. So in Australia, where I said that this, the pushing of this trans agenda on our kids, which is absolutely insane, is going to come to Australia here. And here we have an Adelaide hospital approving 22 kids as young as 11 for transitioning without the required psychiatric assessments. We're hearing stories of kids being taken away from their parents that are pushing back against this. I just think it's utter madness that they're pushing this on our kids. And maybe people should be free to express themselves however they want. Big things like this, probably, at least 18 when you're mature enough to, drink, smoke, get tattoos, all that other stuff. It's just crazy that they're allowing this at such a young age. So Elon here talking about, all the pronouns and that type of stuff. And this is Kira Lee Smith that chimed in here in Australia, where she is actually going to court on April 14th. For referring to a man as a woman. So another case that we have to watch of this insanity that's now come to Australia. And we had another free speech death blow in Victoria, where this anti-vilification and social cohesion bill passed. And so, it's now illegal to offend or insult or humiliate. So, who decides what counts in this type of stuff over all these different issues and whatever? And people are just, gone are the days of having a joke and a bit of banter with your mates at school or the pub or whatever. People are just afraid to talk now about any of these things as the agenda is being pushed. And people don't want this, and that's why it's important to spread this message. Again, staying in Queensland, where hearts go out to our farmers, where we're hearing these different reports of anywhere from, I've had people in the region say this number might even be 3 or 4 times higher, the amount of cattle and sheep that are dead or missing, which is really sad. And we continue to see, obviously, the issues with egg shortages in supermarkets and just this attack on protein, which our bodies need, whether it's, meat, eggs, whatever, this push towards, eating bugs and plant-based meats and all this sort of nonsense, rather than just eating things that are from nature. So Australia has recorded the highest annual number of small business bankruptcies on record. I don't think you can solely blame Albo. This is, as I've said, two-party system, the cabal, the elite, the agenda. This is what they want. Just like we saw during COVID with the lockdowns, McDonald's is allowed to stay open, small business cafes get squashed and pushed out of business. This is all part of their evil plan, guys. But thankfully, plenty of Aussies are waking up. It's good to see stuff like this doing the rounds. on Twitter and getting that message out there, because people, as I just said, do not want this New World Order agenda rolled out. We have to stop it before it's too late. Okay, so again, Tucker, we had Dr. Mary Bowden on. I've covered her work in the past. She went over plenty of fascinating stuff. If you've been down the COVID rabbit hole, hopefully you're aware of this even a couple of years ago. But again, it's just great to see the biggest podcast in the world pushing this message out to millions. And this is another interesting case. I've spoken about the batch variability a lot in previous episodes. So please go to the effort. There's a number of websites where you can go to check the adverse reactions for your batch. And this one was talking about the lethality from a batch beginning with the letter E. So you can go to these websites and check your batch against where you got it at a pharmacy or GP or clinic or whatever. And Dr. Peter McCulloch here talking about the entire vaccine schedule and how we're revisiting it. And again, it's just amazing to see this stuff finally coming out because, guys, as I said, when we do our pharmacy degree or doctors, we just don't get taught any of this. And it's just amazing that it's like living in two worlds now when you talk to different doctors who are across this and others that just think you're mad because they haven't looked into it themselves. And that it's just too hard to believe that everything they've been told could be incorrect. So it's great to see, Moderna stock down 95%. This is what people think of it, and good luck getting people to ever take, this type of stuff again. But this is why I think they're, moving to try and push it more via the food supply and that type of thing. But this was a friend of mine, Dr. Julie Sladden. So I actually had dinner with her and Dr. Gary Fecky, who I've had on the channel before. Had dinner with them during the week. A number of other people there as well who are all across this stuff, and it's just amazing to see the work that they're doing behind the scenes to wake up doctors, even lecturing now at universities about a lot of this stuff. But this was the case that they're talking about with 10 nurses all coming down in the same ward with the same type of brain tumors, and we've seen a similar story in Australia where we've had this cluster of cancer cases, all from nurses and people that had the same batch, guys. So please take the time to look after yourself, get as healthy as possible, do those routines I've spoken about where you can help clear the spike protein out of your body, your fasting, all that type of thing to look after your immune system, and look up whatever batch you had. So great work again from Julie Sladden, fighting the good fight for medical integrity and waking people up. But let's get on to the last couple of things here. As I mentioned just then, Gary Fecky's been a big proponent of the keto diet and cutting out carbs and sugar for many years now after he got cancelled by Big Food and won his case to get his medical license back against APRA. But this is Dr. Mark Hyman explaining how we're starting to see more and more evidence that the keto diet can really cure many, many things. Because your body has the ability to heal itself once you detox, get all the heavy metals out, and get yourself really fit and healthy. So this is, again, amazing to see on the big podcast. And sad one to finish on here. Barbara O'Neill, who is amazing to follow, who's right into all her natural health across all the socials, but she's actually been cancelled by Amazon Australia. So this is the efforts that the Cabal are going to squash and stop this information from getting out there. But thankfully, so many people are waking up. It's amazing to see. I hope you guys are enjoying this series. Please smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, share these videos around, and I'll talk to you again soon. Cheers.